You're doing so much that it's just, I would take like 10 minutes to do your bio. So I'm just going to say you're doing a lot of work here, and I'm going to let you take over here. But this is a really cool presentation as well. If your life is circular, right?
Yep.
So you've been.
If you like circles.
If you like circles,
stick around.
All right. Good job, Straka.
Thanks, Bob. This corridor is a little bit different than the University Avenue corridor. Quite a bit different. You know, I mean, there was a ton of traffic on University Avenue. There was a ton of access. This is kind of a blank slate. This is a story about kind of developing that corridor for the future, and some of the village's proactiveness to take the step and to do that along the corridor. So, you know, as far as an access, Bob and I talked about it a little bit. I mean, access was a thought in this corridor development in the sense of driveway access and connectivity access, bike and ped access that was not even on the corridor to begin with, and even construction access. During construction, how are we going to move vehicles? So I got a little bit of all that sprinkled in here. So a little bit of project background to start. The project covered County Trunk Highway ID from Perimeter Street to US 151 on the to the westbound ramps of 151 in the village of Mount Horeb. And today we're sitting here. This is a map of Dane County. We're sitting down here right in the isthmus. Mount Horeb's to the southwest, about 25 minutes. Smaller community, roughly 7,000 people. What used to be 18151 is ID now today, and that's what I'm going to talk about, this stretch right in here, this mile stretch of ID. The project was spurred by a proposed development on the east side of the community in the early 2000s. So what happened is you can see the North Cape Commons development up here kind of sprung forward, and the village thought, okay, now what are we going to do with the corridor? Are we going to leave it as is, make some connections, or are we going to go the whole way and really improve this? Funding for the 2005 reconstruction was provided by the creation of a TIF district by the village and just directly through their general funds. Even though it was a county road and under county jurisdiction at the time, the village forked over most of the money to do the improvements as part of that. So existing conditions, again, it was under county jurisdiction. It was a 2-lane rural corridor, as you can see there. It had concrete pavement because it was the old 18151 that came through the village before the bypass. It had paved and gravel shoulders, and uniquely in this sense, they're pretty wide paved and gravel shoulders out here. I would say it's probably about 10 feet or so existing of paved and gravel. It was a roadside ditches, typical rural section on the east side of the community, and if you've been over in that area, it's kind of rolling terrain with shallow bedrock that we had to deal with as part of the project, just kind of a background overall. So, you know, we start with a traffic study, and a traffic study was completed to really help determine, you know, what type of roadway facility should be constructed here. And some of the forecasts that consider the following really components. The traffic generated by, it might be a little hard to see that back there, but this purple section, which was North Cape Commons. They also wanted to look at a little bit of the background history of the growth and traffic generated by existing and future development that they were proposed. The red down here, and then the yellow even future up here. So although North Cape Commons was the development coming in, and they needed to do the TIA, the village said, whoa, wait a minute. This corridor is potentially the gateway. We have this interchange, and we have an interchange 5 miles on the other side of the village coming into Mount Horeb, and 75% of the people coming into Mount Horeb from Madison are coming through this interchange. What should we do here? You know, what do we want to do? Access, you know, how are we going to control access on this corridor when it was developed? Well, since the roadway was under county jurisdictions, they basically requested that North Cape Commons, the only access they could have was plat streets to it. There would be no direct access like they had on County Trunk Highway ID going into the village. They would just say, okay, it's straight up streets, and the existing access that were there would either be modified or we try to revise them. We just were trying to not allow them altogether. Several driveways along the corridor were also combined farther on the west side of the community as we got in. We can talk about those a little bit. And the business owners, you know, generally on that side of the community were generally understanding. And the big reason that they understood the project was that they knew this was going to be a major improvement. They were going to try to spur redevelopment on this side of the village, which would add more people coming into the village for them. And the village promised, we're going to build this under construction. I mean, we're going to build this under traffic. We're going to build this corridor under traffic. It's not going to disrupt the businesses at the time. So just a little bit about the traffic study that was done. There was the TIA that was done for the development, looking out to the horizon year of 2025. Standard trip generation procedures were also used and resulted in actually even higher volumes than what would be achieved in 2025. Nothing was adjusted though. The village really wanted to take into the consideration of all of this proposed development, and you could see they were shooting for these really massive traffic numbers that they weren't going to hit at 2025, and they knew that, but they wanted to make sure that they could plan for it well into the future. I mean, today, unfortunately, this was built in 2005. They were expecting a bunch of redevelopment in this area, and we all know when around 2008 recession hit, everything really slowed down. Today, they probably have about, perimeter is the east side of this project as it comes out to the interchange. They have about 10,000 or so there today, so about a 25% increase, and maybe a little about 8,000 out here, 8,500, about 30% out here. So they still haven't seen their potential, but that didn't stop them from building the ultimate. So what were the suggested improvements after we started looking at this? Well, one was to provide a divided 4-lane highway east of Perimeter Street to the westbound ramps. I highlighted it in red there. So 4-lane divided roadway, and then provide traffic signals at the intersections of Perimeter, Brookwood, Telemark Parkway, and then a modern roundabout over at the interchange, basically at Lillehammer Lane and Ridgeview. Now, these were the two new streets, Brookwood and Telemark Parkway, that this development was going to take place. And actually, this was the ultimate. We told them at the time, hey, don't even put these signals in. Let's design it for signals, wait for the traffic, and it'll be a two-way stop. It will just be minor stop control here, and ID will basically remain the same way it is today, pretty much a free flow, just initially to start. Well, what did they say? What were their concerns? So they wanted to do something different. Again, they kept thinking, big picture and what do they want to do? The village board indicated that maintaining access during construction was their number one. We understood that. They were also concerned about the cost and the right-of-way needs for this 4-lane section. So 4 lanes is a lot, knowing that traffic's to come in the future, but they wanted to buy the right-of-way and maintain that width. So they said maybe between Perimeter and Brookwood, which is further in the village, it's kind of already built out. Let's maybe look at something different there. And at the same time, the village board was interested in a roundabout corridor. They said rather than signalizing these intersections, and because of how well they had just installed one, the state had installed one of the first ones on County Trunk Highway ID in 78, and I'll show a picture of that in a second. They were like, it's working so great, let's just put in all roundabouts. And we're like, are you sure? There hasn't been a corridor in Wisconsin at the time that had these roundabouts stacked up in a row. I mean, you'd have essentially 5 of them in a mile and a half along this corridor. And they said, well, we want an attractive looking corridor, and this is going to do it, and we love the roundabout. I mean, here was a roundabout that they had. It's a dark picture, apologize, but this was the 78 and ID one. Quick Trip was here up in this corner, and it had access all the way kind of close to this intersection. There was a stoplight before here, long queues, kind of a pain in the butt if you went through it, and they just loved the way it was handling. It was working great for the 2 years that they had it, and they said, we just want to keep moving. Let's do roundabouts. So we reviewed it. We reviewed the additional options. We reviewed the roundabout operations, and they were fine. Each was expected to operate well into the future planned development. And then also the 2-lane alternative, the divided section, the 4-lane section between Perimeter and Brookwood. We put a couple more options to the board. We said you could do a 4-lane section there, but maybe you don't want to because there is left turning movements. Maybe we go with a 3-lane section and a twiddle as part of that, so that you can make some of those left-hand movements there. We looked at the 3-lane section. It would work even with those high traffic numbers, but coming out of some of the entrances of some of those existing access points, it was going to be hard to make those left turns in the AM and PM period. So some of those lefts would have to be restricted. What do you think? We went to the board. What do you think? Ultimately, they endorsed the following as part of this project. They provide a divided 2-lane. So get rid of the twiddle. We're going to provide a divided 2-lane in this section with left turn bays. So it's kind of a high, it's a better situation than the twiddle. They get their median, they can landscape it, they can make it attractive. Similar to like Monona Drive that we saw earlier when, if those of you who saw and were in the Monona Drive presentation. And then a 4-lane section the rest of the way with the median as part of that project. And let's go 4 roundabouts. Let's just do this. It works, it's going to be awesome. Let's go with it. The community is well behind it, and it did end up working quite well. That is what was built today. All 4 roundabouts are out there. And then the 5th as I said, is just a half mile down the road over here. So you have 5 coming into the community. As you come in that interchange, that probably 75% of the people that go to Mount Horeb come through. So the big thing was they promised that we'd build it under traffic. So that was kind of the next, access. How are we going to maintain access along this corridor to the businesses? I'm talking about the businesses and stuff that were down here. And then, again, everybody's coming in the community this way. A lot of these people that live in Mount Horeb work in Madison, and they come back and forth. So we had to break it up into phases. The first phase was, let's build this interchange roundabout. Luckily, 2 miles down the road, County Trunk Highway P, there was another interchange, and we had the frontage road of Ridgeview that ran here, and we could get people off of that interchange, bring them through, and maintain traffic on the corridor. As we were building this roundabout, remember that wide median, or that wide shoulder I was showing you before? We had wide shoulders on either end. We also temporarily started to pave the north section of this, because the next phase would be build the south half, and we wanted to shift traffic a little bit to the north so we could build that half of the project. Let's just look at a few pictures, and here's the roundabout as it's getting built, curbs up at that interchange, concrete starting to go in, pavement down. That's all the further we needed to take it. They don't have to be complete. A lot of them were kind of built partially so that we could function traffic through it. So as it was built, we could function traffic now through it in either direction, basically shift them a little bit to the north and build all of the south half. Now the developer was already putting in their improvements here, so we could shut down one of these access points at a time. So we'd build one roundabout as people were coming in through here and maintain access, and then we'd build the other one, the half of the roundabout. And then over here, interesting enough, we only built this little corner of the roundabout. If you can see that, there was a little block loop here that allowed traffic to get to these businesses back and around, and we said, let's build just a part of that, and then in a later phase, we'll build the rest of it to maintain that access during construction. You can see our plans were pretty much that, where we're building a half shaded, and we're allowing traffic to run, on the north half as part of that. This is just showing connections to the developer's work, and just running them on the other side of the traffic before we started the third phase. So the third phase was then going to be built to do the north side and maintain access to the businesses as we were going along, and we had to build it in pieces, but that was just part of the project. Here you can see, as part of this, we're going to build the rest of the roundabout, and I wanted to show pictures of that to show that it actually kind of worked as we had planned, where we would allow people to come through here and build that first, and then in the next phase we'd build the rest of the roundabout, and that's exactly how the contractor did it and maintained it. So it seemed to work, and we were able to keep, like, the McDonald's, Walgreens was building on this site at the time just after this. People were happy with the access that they were given. And then right at the end, we had to come back and finish up the splitter islands and some of the central islands. And you think, well, why didn't you do that to begin with? Well, there's a lot of truck access out here too. We had semi-trucks that were coming through this. We had a Brunzel, who was a builder, would build truss and pre-build stuff for homes, was hauling that stuff back and forth on this corridor all day long. So we had to maintain truck traffic through these medians, and going reverse in the roundabouts was tough. So we had to leave a lot of these medians off, temporary paved, and then once the 4-lane corridor was built, push the traffic to the outside and then build the center islands on the last phase. So what are the benefits of the divided highway and the roundabouts? Plenty of additional capacity with future development. They wanted to have that capacity for final build out. The median in the roundabouts provided a place for landscaping. It gave them their gateway. They really wanted this gateway, this feel of a community sense when they came through this corridor. The roundabouts enabled the U-turn movements, which provided right in, right out access points for a lot of the businesses on that west half, because we did restrict some of those to right in, right out. And because they were so close, you had 4 of them in a mile. A quarter of a mile to do a U-turn was not a problem for most people, and they could wrap their heads around it and understood why we were doing that. They also coined the phrase the trollway. So if you've ever been to Mount Horeb, they love their trolls. They got this Norwegian kind of back history, and someone put a troll out on the sidewalk, I think, years ago, and now every business has a troll. And instead of a tollway, they were proud of the road, they called it a trollway instead of the tollway road. So, and it was, surprisingly enough, I drive it a lot, and it really does calm the traffic. It really calms the speed, calms the traffic, and it really helped in that sense along the corridor. So I was going to show some before and after. I hope these show up fairly decent in the back. So there's the before again. There's the after. Quite a different look from the before as far as that corridor looks. You know, they added bikes. They added sidewalks on both sides. They obviously have that median, nice lighting, banners. They made it look very attractive. And then each of the roundabouts, perimeter, then the roundabout after it was in Brookwood, and then this is where the developer connected in. So I went and took what the developer did right before the roundabout project happened. Here's what the roundabout looked like after it was installed. You can see aesthetically it really changes the feel of these intersections. And then I just recently went out and took a picture from here looking back to show the redevelopment that was taking place. All this redevelopment that the developer was hoping for, a grocery store, commercial area, a lot of the houses, a new water tower behind, you know, this side of the community really started to explode once they improved the corridor along there. Then Telemark Parkway, again, you know, very different feel. The interchange, this is where you came and got off to go into Mount Horeb. You know, you didn't even really know Mount Horeb was there, and you know, at first. And now it looks a lot different. You come in and there's already some development here and you can see development, but you know, it's a whole different character as you come into that interchange. So this is kind of the corridor. I don't know how well you can see it from back there, but it does have the 4 roundabouts on it from, you know, 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th one's out here. I have it looking the other way as we're looking back in, so as soon as I wanted to interchange, and you look at it. This is an old picture right after the project was done. Most of this has been developed up in this section. They're still waiting on here and in here, but it's come quite a long ways. So any questions about the corridor?
Any questions, Jeff? Oh, wait a minute.